So ang gusto ko for this course talagang may matutunan kayo, and that's the important thing. And after this course, you will be better appreciate probability, and let us look at how probability actually figures in a lot of modeling problems. Isa na dyan, of course, yung sa stat, kung if you're using stat in your work or in your thesis or in your internship, then I hope na by taking this course, you are better able to understand probabilistic models. So ito yung ating course guide. Just take time to read. So you need to review the set and function. So what are these two? You need to read that. I have also attached here the a paper or a tutorial or a note where you can read. You can also find that in Canvas. I will also upload it. Okay, para in case the link won't work, then you'll be able to read it even if the link is defective. So just read the course outcome. So it's very important, the course learning outcomes, because it will it's a test for you. It's a way to evaluate yourself whether you have achieved the learning outcome for this course. Ito yung ating course outline. Sets, probability, discrete random variables, probability distribution. Some of these actually we have already discussed in statistics and AMAT 131 and Stat 1. Okay, most of this. Maybe what's new is the continuous random variables, but continuous, you have already have some experience with working on some continuous random variables. One of the best example of that is the normal distribution. So that's actually a continuous random variable. And maybe another is the F distribution or the chi-square distribution. So those are continuous random variables, and we will study them in great detail in this course. And then maybe what's new for you is the multivariate probability distribution and the distribution function of random variables. So distribution function, so maybe you have already worked with functions, right? So ano ba yung mga functions na natutunan niyo na? Can you give me an example, Miss Alaina? Example of functions?
2x minus 1 equals...
Oh, what type of function is that?
Linear. Tama ba?
Good. So you have experience with linear function, polynomial function, no? Rational function, the logarithmic function, exponential function. And you deal actually with yung binigay example niya no? Ni-align na 2x minus 1. So y equals to x minus 1. But here, in this lesson, no, medyo later na, we have function of random variable. So it means that yung x doon, yung 2x plus 1, usually yung x natin is variable, arbitrary value. No? But that's assumed as a real value, right? So what if our x is a random variable? No? So what if x is normally distributed random variable? So what is the distribution of y? So ang y natin is y is equal to 2x plus 1 or minus 1, and x is a let us say a normal distribution. So what is the distribution of y? So that is the topic on distribution function of random variables. And it's very important to understand, because kung nagmo-model kayo, sometimes your x is not only a value that you need to determine or a specific value. No, sometimes it could be a distribution. It could be a probability distribution. So that's the lesson. Medyo mahirap yan. Ako nahirapan. Medyo mahirap siya na topic just to set the expectation. It can be difficult. Okay, so mode of delivery natin is asynchronous, self-learning. As I've said, it will be self-learning. May mga topics na madali lang siya. Basahin, good na. But some topics are more difficult to understand. So that's the reason why I asked you to use the Canvas discussion forum. Mag-post kayo doon kung meron kayong topic na hindi masyado maintindihan. Or you can consult me, or you can also request a one-on-one or meeting, synchronous meeting. And then medyo talaga ito, medyo marami tayong gagawin na solving, but most of the solving are not graded, no? Yung iba dyan is just to help you practice with your skills sa pag-solve ng probability problems and to manipulate equations in probability. We have also lecture notes, study guides. Usually hindi ako nagbibigay ng study guide unless hindi ako nagsisynchronous. So nagsisynchronous ako. Pag nagsisynchronous ako, hindi ako na masyado nabibigay ng study guide. But you will have assignments, you have lecture videos. So nagre-record din ako. May mga recording ako past semester. So I will also share that to you para makakita ninyo. So last sem, this course is team taught by Mama Yang. Pero ngayon busy siya. So ako na lang muna ang magtuturo. Okay? And our book reference is it's si Wackerle, Mendenhall, and Skay Schaffer. So itong book na to, I will upload a copy sa ating Canvas. Okay? And gumagamit din ako ng Ross, First Course in Probability, 10th edition. Meron din tayo. Of course, you are free to to explore other resources. Kung meron kayo makitang book na maganda on probability and mathematical statistics, then it would be nice kung you also read that. So, first week, wala naman ito masyado. Just familiar with course syllabus. Meron tayong Sept theory. No? What is a Sept? And operations on Sept. Yung mga yan, mga intersection, Sept difference. No? Yun lang naman. And then, because, probability is based on sets. It's very important to understand the connection. When you say probability, it's actually a manipulation on sets. Yan yung probability. If you understand sets, then you are good to go for studying probability. And of course, yung function. Okay? Kung maintindihan niyo yung function, then mas maintindihan niyo yung probability. Okay? So ito, we start now our week 3. This is still a review. Pero nagsynchronous na ako. I forgot the counting techniques pala. Counting techniques, alam niyo naman yan, yung mga permutation, combinations, basically counting. Bakit importante itong counting sa probability? As I've said, probability is based on set. And probability is also based on counting the number of elements in a set. Okay, so some probability laws or computing probability involve counting the elements in a set. Okay? So, kaya yan siya. Maganda na i-review din ninyo. Same with week 3, so that's the way, so hindi na ito masyado heavy. Yun lang, sample space, element, you define what is an sample space, what is an event, what's an event. What is a sample space?
Ang sample space po, sir, kay set possible outcomes sa experiment po.
Good. So that's basically, no? So alam nyo na. So hindi na ako mamblema dyan. And then on week 4, review pa rin yan siya. Okay, conditional probability. I think familiar na kayo niyan. No? Conditional probability. I will know kasi bibigyan kayo ng exercises and quizzes. Week 5 na naman tayo mag-synchronous. We will be proving some theorems in probability laws and some problems using Bayes' rule. Ito dapat nyo matutunan. Probability axioms. What are the probability axioms? So, because that is the basis for all of probability, yung mga axiom na yan. Okay. Then week 5, sinabi ko na, mag-synchronous. Synchronous din tayo sa introduction on discrete random variables. So, ano yung mga alam nyo na discrete random variables? So, yung pinakasikat, ano yung pinakasikat? Bernoulli, di ba? Bernoulli, binomial distribution, geometric distribution, di ba? Yan yung mga example ng discrete random variable. Okay, anyway, meron naman tayong lecture dyan, so ma-remind kayo ulit. And then we will have also, ito na yung mga special distribution, binomial, negative, geometric, hyper, and Poisson. Then we will have a reading break on November for this week. So reading break yan siya, wala kayong gagawin. And then the following week, we will have the synchronous again on continuous. Ito na yung mga uniform, gamma, exponential, chi-square, beta. Okay? Then we will go to multivariate, which is an extension lang naman ng ating single random variables. And then our distribution functions. So yan, medyo mahirap yan. So we will spend some time. So what are the requirements? 3 long exams, 1 final exam, report, isang oral exam, kada long exam, and we have quizzes and problems. So ano tong long exam and final exam? So meron tayong tatlong long exam tsaka one final exam. Ang topic for exam 1 is ito lang, kung saan, anong date, week siya nakalagay, yung topics preceding that week, yun ang magiging topic niya. So for example, ito exam 1, we will be discussing discrete. So basically, discrete and the probability loss, yun yung magiging topic natin for exam 1. Ito namang exam 2, more exclusive ito siya, puro continuous naman ang exam. And exam 3 would be about multivariate, okay? And then the final exam will be all topics. Final exam, all topics, pero ito yung distribution ng questions. So 20% will be from exam 1, 20 from exam 2, and then exam 3 and topics not covered will be 40%. So very simple lang ang exam kasi kukunin ko, i-recycle ko lang siya. 60% of the questions are recycled from our 3 exams. And then meron lang 40 new questions na ang topic niya is under ng functions of random variables. Oral report. So magre-report kayo, although kaunti lang kasi kayo. So I will assign you to each of this exercise, itong 7. Na they are like 11 or 12 ba sa inyo? So, I will assign you each one kung ano. So, pag sinabi kong 1, it means dito kayo 1. And kasi 7 ito, so merong mga exercises na dalawa yung ma-assign to do that. So, mamaya I will determine kung sino yung pupunta sa 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, these are basically exercises lang naman na nasa book. So, kung meron kayong, I will also share the book. And then some of these are actually proved sa book mismo, nandun na siya. Okay, so ang requirement lang dito is you just prepare a oral report discussing the solutions to this. You can either submit a pre-recorded or you can also submit you can do it live. Okay? And of course, yung request ni Alaina, oral exam tayo. So mag-oral exam tayo every long exam. No? So ano ba ang purpose ng oral exam? Just to make sure na kayo talaga yung nag-answer ng inyong exam. So ang questions actually is galing na sa mga exam. Ipasosolve ko lang live. Simple lang naman siya kasi ang oral is galing lang yan siya doon sa exam na question. So for example, tawagin ko, Josephine, okay, natama itong pag-solve mo sa question 2. Okay, solve question 2 live. So hindi yan siya hindi yan siya new questions. Galing yan talaga sa exam. And then quizzes and problem sets. From time to time, I will give you some quizzes, problem sets. I will just need to speak to my TA. May TA para tayo. Kausapin ko muna siya para sa mga quizzes natin and problem sets. Okay? And that is basically 20% of your final grade. Okay? So kada long exam, 10%. Final 20, report 20, oral exam 10. So total na to sa lahat ng oral exam 10%. Then ako, kung nyo pa ako nakita in person, ako yan siya. And then yung house rules natin, just read it. And then ito yung rubric kung paano ko kayo i-grade sa report. Yes. May tanong ba kayo?
Sir, may tanong po ako sa oral, sir.
Yes.
Ano po, kanang together po kami lahat mag-answer, sir? I mean like in one meeting, tas turn by turn kami
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Live yan siya kasi gusto ko i-practice yung skill ninyo ba? Paano kayo so example, sa interview, di ba? Pag interview kasi, siyempre oral, meron talaga yung face-to-face interview, no? So dapat ma-practice kayo dyan, di kayo kabahan. Na next time mag-apply kayo ng work tapos interviewin kayo, isipin nyo na lang, ay, this is just an oral exam with Sir Bloody. Then will build your confidence. Yeah?
Okay po, sir. Salamat po.
Yes. Sige, I will share the canvas para makita ninyo. So meron na akong na-upload dyan ng mga materials. I-upload ko lang yung book natin. Tapos, yan, basically, hanggang week 5 na yan nakalagay dyan. Basahin nyo lang. And of course, read the book. Tapos itong Math 181, click nyo lang yan siya. Tapos open site in new window, you will find the introductory lecture. Okay? For that. So dyan, i-discuss ko yung sets, functions, and some set theory. We will have also presentation. I will share some example, yung mga output last time. Para makita nyo, magkaroon kayo ng inspiration kung ano yung ibibigay ni o i-deliver nyo na out. But we can be more creative, okay, on that aspect. So, nasa inyo na kung ano yung gusto nyo, how do you present it. Okay, I think that's all for the orals.
Nag-ask po si Aldrin mga pila po ang question, sir, per student. I think
Sa
sa oral
unsan
po. Sa oral po yata, sir.
Oral exam? Depende
I think-
kung feel na ko nga padaghanon, ana. Pero dili ko mag-ask og question nga wala dito sa exam. Pero di pa ko
Salamat,
satisfy
sir.
kayo. I feel that I'm not really satisfied with the answer. Then I'm going to ask additional questions. Pero importante talaga, guys, is basahin nyo lang. Kung meron kayo hindi maintindihan, mag-email kayo, ilagay nyo doon sa ano. Tapos, we can have a topic. We can have a session discussing that. Ang technique kasi to understand it, you should have a specific way of thinking para maintindihan niyo ang capability. Yun ang idea actually. For any discipline, you have to become that person na yung way of thinking mo is same doon sa subject. Yung mga magagaling on that subject, yung way of thinking mo must be in harmony with them para mas maintindihan mo yung topic na yun. Yeah, so yun ang gusto kong i-build sa ating course. Isa sa gusto kong i-build is yung how do you think like a probabilitist? Di ba? Yun ang gusto ko. So I will give our lesson is week 3. Define an element. Okay. So let's have the probability. Probability loss discussion. Okay, so we will start our discussion on probability. Introduction to probability. Okay. So suppose we are observing a random phenomena. No? Pag sinabi natin random phenomena, ibig sabihin, outcome is not the result or the outcome is not determined. No? We cannot really predict what would be the outcome. So yan yung ibig sabihin ng random phenomena. So marami na mga random phenomena na maisip natin. Okay, the weather tomorrow is a random phenomena because we cannot really predict with certainty whether tomorrow there will be rain or it will be sunny the whole day. So that's a random phenomenon. Another random phenomena could be accidents happening in let us say mental highway, no? So that's it could be na may accident, it could be nga mayroong isang accident, could be walang accident. I hope na wala talaga accident kasi diyan ako dumadaan. Or meron mang accident, siguro isa, dalawa within a day. That is actually a random phenomenon. No? And the actual event that happens is what we call a random event. Okay, remember that. So there's a difference between random phenomena and a random event. Okay, so the number of accidents that will happen in mental highway on a given day is a random phenomenon. And if there are 2 accidents happening on a given day, then that is a random event. Okay, that is the outcome that actually happened. Okay, and in probability, we always discuss about sample space. Yung sinabi kanina ni Joanna. Ano ba pag-pronounce Joanna? Joanny? Juan or Juan?
Joanne, sir.
Joan. Ba't may E dyan? Dapat Joanny.
Hindi ko po alam sa parents ko.
Joan. So sabi ni Joan, sample space is the set of puzzle. Kaya sabi ko, importante ang set because ito palang sample space, set lang siya, kaya lang meron lang siyang name, special name. Parang tao siya, kaya lang meron siyang name. No? So pag sinabi kong tao, that's very generic. But when I say Juan Capasilio, that's very specific. Tao pa rin, pero very specific. Meron siyang characteristic. Okay? Meron siyang behavior, meron siyang attitude, meron siyang dreams, meron siyang aspirations in life. So that makes that set unique in a sense. And same with sample space. It's just a set, but it has some characteristic that identifies it or that is unique from all other set. And when you say sample space, it's actually a set that corresponds to an outcome or to outcomes of a certain random phenomena. So the example is yung, if you're going to, yung pinaka-common na example, yung dice. Okay? If you're going to roll a die and observing the outcome is actually either you will roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or number of dots, no, na mag-show up. Number of dots na mag-show up. Then that is a random, the result of a roll of a die, it's a random phenomena. But if you say na 1 yung mag-show up, then that's a random event. And the set of all possible outcomes, so in my example, yung die, pag-roll ng die, possible outcomes niyan is, if you count the number of dots na mag-show up, then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that is the sample space. And subset of that sample space is what we call event. Okay, so I mean, when I say, okay, what's the event that I will roll? When I roll a die, I get an even number of dots. So ano yung mga outcomes associated with that? It's either 2, 2, 4, and 6. And if you collect that in a set, which is actually a subset of the sample space, then that is now what we call an event. Okay? And then, now what is probability? Okay, I have discussed sample space, I have discussed a event. But there's also another event, no? Kasi subset lang, di ba siya? So meron tayong special event, yung sinasabi nating null event, which is corresponds to the null set. So kasali yan siya actually sa event. Kasali din ng S as an event kasi subset din naman siya. Remember that every set is a subset of itself. And the null set is a subset of any set. Tama? So kasali din siya sa event. Correct? And what is the probability measure? So pag sinabi natin probability is actually a measure. Yes. Hala sir, bakit naging measure siya? Okay. If I use a thermometer and I'm going to point that to a line na, ano yung makukuha ko na measure? Kung ano ko nang yung thermometer kuan ko kay Carmela, gamitin ko kay Alina, ano yung makukuha ko na measure? Temperature, di ba? Very specific ka naman, very specific ka naman.
Sorry, sir.
I'll get a temperature, right? Kung gagamit naman ako ng weighing scale kay Alvin, ano yung makukuha ko?
Yung mass po, sir.
Weighing scale, mass?
In kilograms, yung mass or pounds.
Yes, or the weight. Weight, di ba?
Yes.
Hindi naman mass.
Kilograms naman siya, sir. So, mass gapon siya, sir.
But actually, weight
kasi, sir,
yan
may
siya.
gravity.
Correct. Weight, actually, weight. Pag nasa Earth, weight yan. Tama? Okay, how about kukuha ako ng ruler, tapos ilagay ko siya from head to foot. Ano yung makukuha ko na measure?
Yung length niya, sir.
Yung height, tama?
Alright, sige.
Yes. So, probability in a sense is actually a measure. It measures something. What is this measure? It's actually a number that we assign to a set or to events of a set. Kaya yun yung idea, kaya mahalaga yung concept of a set in probabilities because you have sets and you're assigning a number to those sets. And that number that you assign corresponds to probability. So that's why we asked, what is the probability of an event? Which is just actually a number that is associated to that set. And how is that number assigned? What number we assign? That is the main thing about probability theory. Okay? And these are the axioms of probability. So pag sinabi nating axioms, ito yung basis ng lahat ng probability natin. And from this small set of action, there are actually just 3. Yes, tatlo lang talaga siya. We can build the entire field of probability. Not convinced? I'll convince you. Okay. So this measure has to satisfy certain property. Ito na yung mga axioms natin. And is always associated to a set, S, which is the sample space, by defining for each event. So, meron kang set, meron kang subset, you have a measure, which is the probability, and this is how you would assign measure to each of these events or each of this subset of the sample space. First, the probability of each event must not be less than 0. Gets? So, di pala pwede negative kasi measure cannot be negative. Of course, may mga measure na negative like temperature, mga ganun. But we define here that it shouldn't be negative. Ang pinaka-minimum na talaga niya is 0. So, any event or any subset of that S, the probability or the value or the measure for that event should not be less than 0. Okay. Second action, the probability of the sample space is 1. So remember that it's 1 because we define that as the sure event or the sure thing because it's just the sample space. 1. Okay, so yan pala. So from this axiom, makuha na natin that the probability cannot be less than 0 and it cannot be more than 1. From this axiom, 2. 1 and 2. Tama? Kaya wala namang mas tataas dapat dito sa probability S kasi yan naman siya ang sample space. And the third axiom is very simple. The probability of the union of events is just equal to the sum of the probabilities. If, remember this is very important, if E intersection E for all ij, J yan siya dapat, is null set. It means that these two are what we call mutually exclusive events. Correct? And we can extend this. We can rewrite this as E1 union E2. Ito yung symbol niya para mas compact siya. It's just sum. As long as this EI here are mutually exclusive. It means that if you compute the intersection, you will get the null set. Okay, so tatlong axiom. Ano yung first axiom, Josephine?
Greater than or equal to 0.
Correct. That's the first axiom. Lagay mo yan sa isip natin always. Pag merong negative, kabahan na kayo. Hindi yan siya probability. Aldwin, what's the second axiom?
The sample size, sample space is equal to 1. Or the probability of the sample space is equal to 1.
Correct. The probability of the sample space is 1. Good. Third, kayo lang kasi, so kayo lang talaga matawag ko. Carmela, ano yung third?
Probability of all events is the sum of each of their probabilities given that they are mutually exclusive or disjoint. So yun, sir.
Yung intersection nila ay null set. Yes. Yeah, tatlo lang. Very simple. Yes. Good. Put that in your heart and you will not go wrong. So, yan lang yung ibig sabihin niya, no? So, kung i-represent natin yan siya as set, tapos wala ang intersection, probability niyan lahat is just the sum. Some exercise muna on probability theorem. Let's solve some probability theorem using the actions lang, no, na ating na-discuss. Now that we have that, prove that the probability of the null set is 0. Paano natin i-prove? Remember that the null set and the sample space are di ba, ang null set is para lang naman yan siyang set na 0. Sige, ilagay muna natin yung mga axiom. 1, first axiom, probability of any event is greater than or equal to 0. Second axiom, probability of the sample space is 1. Third axiom, probability. Gawin na lang muna nating dalawang event kasi extension lang man. Union equals E1 plus E2. Okay? As long as E1 is mutually exclusive or yung disjoint. Okay, now we need to prove that probability of the null set is 0. Okay. So by axiom, by set theory, we know that union of the sample space and the null is always S. Why? Because if you are going to determine the union of any set to the null set, it's always that set. Okay? So if you apply the probability SU equals probability S, from axiom 2, you know that it's 1. And from axiom 3, you know that this is probability S plus probability null set. And you know that this is 1. So manipulating, you will have 1 minus 1 or 0. So we prove that the probability of the null set is 0. Another, prove that the probability of A, B complement. When you say B complement, it's actually ito yung symbol natin na complement. It means that all elements in the sample space that is not in B. Prove that probability of A intersection. So intersection, inaalis ko na lang yung intersection kasi usually understood na yan siya na pag wala intersection tapos para siyang product, it means intersection is equal to probability of A minus probability of A, B. Okay. Sino makaprove nito using our actions? Probability of A intersection B complement is equal to probability of A minus probability of AB. So ito, madali lang to siya. Ang gagawin niyo lang is set pa rin, set theory. So, if you can imagine, itong AB, kung i-Venn diagram niyo, ito yung A. Tsaka ito yung B. For example, intersect sila. Ano yung A intersection B complement? Di ba ito? Minus the intersection. Okay? So therefore, you can actually say na this part here can be taken as probability of A minus probability of AB. Tama? Okay. So, ano ba itong part na ito? Itong nasa gitna. Di ba ito yung intersection AB? Na? Ano tong part na ito? Di ba yan yung A, B, intersection, complement? Map? So therefore, ito palang AB tsaka AB complement is just A. So AB union AB complement is just A. Tama? Now, aside from that, we know that AB and AB complement is mutually exclusive or disjoint siya. So, pwede na palang AB plus P A B complement equals ability of A. Okay? Manipulate niyo lang yan, you will get this. Okay? Dami nito, yan, ilipat niyo dyan, magiging yan. So we have proven that AB complement, so memorize na lang, at least alam niyo na kung paano mag-prove, is just A minus AB without the complement. Okay? That will actually help us determine, will help us prove what's the probability of E complement. And axiom says, theorem says that the probability of the complementary event is just 1 minus P E. Okay. So anong connect niyan, sir, doon sa pinove natin kanina? Remember that probability of S, E complement, using yung kanina, ito, ang S dyan A, ang E dyan B, is just equal to probability of A minus probability of AB. So, walang complement. So, probability of S minus probability of SE. But what is probability of S? Based on the axiom 2, it's 1. And what is probability of S intersection E? Di ba? S intersection is just E. Tama? So this proves our theorem. Okay. Next theorem. Probability. Sir, paano naman yung case na ang dalawang event ay hindi mutually exclusive? A union B but hindi mutually exclusive or hindi disjoint. Ano yung probability? Sige, sino maka-answer? Let's have, ito madali lang kasi to. Alena.
Sir?
Yes. So ano yung probability ni A union B kung ang ating A at D ay hindi disjoint?
If hindi siya disjoint, then meron
Yes.
siyang common.
Yes.
So, kung ano yung common niya, I don't know. Wait lang.
So, probability of A, di ba meron naman to sa stat?
Nakalimutan
Plus.
ako, sir.
Ability of B
Ay, yes.
minus ability of
A intersection.
yes.
Ay, yeah, tama.
Yes. So, sets lang ba yan? Pero unsa na to pag-prove na?
Mm-mm.
Di ba? Sir, to mag-prove. Wala si Elena. Ay, sa in naman na, sir.
Ay,
Okay.
nakalimot naman ko, sir.
O gani.
Mm.
Ang technique maguna na Elena, tagluan ta ka ha. Technique ana always is, you have to think about sets that are mutually exclusive or disjoint.
Disjoint.
Yes. Okay,
Wait,
kung
help,
ito yung
sir.
ano, ito yung Venn diagram. Ito yung A, ito yung B. Di ba? Ito yung union. Lahat.
Mm-mm.
So how do you express this such that disjoint itong mga sets na dyan na involved?
I-consider ang universe.
Di, kini lang. So pwede na, kini nga A, di mo pa klaro na pang gawin. Kini nga A, kini, plus kini. Ha?
Ah.
Correct? So unsa man ni siya?
Ano? U minus B complement? Tama man, di ba,
Opo.
sir? U.
Ha?
Ay, U.
Kini lang. So B, union, A, B complement. Yeah? So kini ang B,
Mm-mm.
tapos kini nga
Union.
part lang is A intersection B complement. Ito ganyan, para itong ganyan. Tama?
Mm-mm. Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay. So
Tapos-
meaning, kini siya is already disjoint na ni sila. Kung B o AB complement. So, ang iyang probability by axiom 3 is probability of B plus probability of A, B, C.
There's, mm,
Tama? B complement. So, A intersection. But, unsa man ning AB complement? Di ba mo man ni? Probability of A minus probability of AB. Itong ganyan.
oo. Ah.
So, pwede na siya probability of B plus probability of A minus probability of
A intersection B.
yes. Wa? Sumada na siya. Sayun lang, no?
Wala ko na sayunan, sir. Pero I will study. I'll study
No,
that.
because ang technique na lagi is maghanap ka lang ng set. Kasi ang action kasi natin deals with disjoint set. Yeah, disjoint kasi siya. So maghanap ka lang ng paano mo to i-express ng dalawang disjoint set. So ito yun, B tsaka AB complement. Then, just apply.
Okay.
Tama? Good.
Okay, sir.
Okay, let's have another one. Si Kuana po, si Carmela. Carmela!
Hello, sir.
Okay. Ang imo ang buhaton, Carmela, what if ang A is a subset of B? Okay? Okay? Now, first nimo i-prove, Carm, is prove nimo nga ang probability ni B A complement. Remember that A is a subset of B. Okay? Muna idea. Is just equal to probability of B minus probability of A. Very intuitive. Tama man po. Kung naa kay A, kung mao ni mo ang Venn diagram A, tapos naa kay B, kay subset man siya, ang probability ni BA complement, so meaning kini nga part, murag itlog, pero mo ni saya sa daap. Kining makapalibot kay A pero naa kay B is just B minus A. So how do you prove that?
Wait lang sir, na-confused pa po ko. Saan na pag-start?
So sa tong technique,
Oh my God.
kato gamiton nimo ning mga natutunan nato diri. Probability of A, B complement, probability of A minus na. Gamiton nimo na.
Sige sir.
Na may complement, so gamiton nimo diretso. Sige, go.
Ay, saka tong sa third.
Makaano ba ka diri sa akuan? Sa Jamboard? Wala lagi ka diri sa Jamboard.
Ay, dili ko makasulod sa...
Hindi, nga naman.
Wait lang, sir. Kaya ko sabi. Eh,
Sige. Ay, sulat na lang na ako, balik diri. Kini. Kira. So, para dili kay ka malibog, magamit og laing letters. X, Y na lang. Complement is just equal to probability of X minus probability of XY. So, mo na itong na-prove kaniya. So, use this to prove this. Given that A is a subset of B.
Given that A is a subset. Subset? Di siya na proper subset. Sir.
A is a subset of B. Or a sub-event. Tawag natin dyan sa probability. P, probability of A is yun. Sama ni mo na pag-expand. Equals unsa. Base dere. Don't be afraid. Be brave, little one.
Mama. Siya.
Yes, good. Okay, analyze nimo.
And
Ang A is a subset for B. Unsa man ang AB intersection B? A intersection B. Unsa man?
A lang gyapon.
O, A yapon. So nasab na nimo.
So, nagyapon siya sa digit na nako.
Yes. Ay, hawad man day ka Carmela, oy.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Yay. Ako na i-complete.
Correct. Tumo na siya.
Yes, sir.
No? Magamit lang mga axiom or mga theorem nga na prove na nato. Now, Carmela, prove that probability of A is less than or equal to B. B. If A is a subset of B. By axiom 1, unsa man ni siya?
Ang least possible na is 0.
Correct.
Difference is 0.
Greater than or equal to 0. So therefore, kini po siya must be greater than or equal to 0. Tama?
So iyan na.
So manipulate lang din.
Kapit na.
Di ba?
Sir.
This way, we can actually prove that probability will not exceed 1. But probability will always be 0 less than or equal to 1. Nga naman, prove na to. Lahi na po atong anuhon. Tawagon. Ganyan, wala magun nato na prove sa axiom na dapat less than 1. Basta kibalot ta nga ang sample space 1, probability must be less than must be greater than or equal to 0. Pero wala na ito na-prove nga between 0 and 1. I-prove na ito karon nga between 0 and 1 lang. Let's call Aldwin. Go, it's your time to shine, Aldwin. So, duha man ni, dapat i-prove na ito nga tama ni tama po ni. Tama? So, by axiom 1, tama ni. Kini na lang. Probability of any event is always less than 1. Equal or less than 1. Remember that event is a subset of S. Tama? So, using this, we can say that probability of event is always less than or equal to probability of S. Correct? And what is probability of S? 1. So we have shown axiom 1, and we have also shown probability of E is always less than or equal to 1, proving this state. Kibalo na sa mga rules, probability, nag-prove na ta. Actually, daghang patag prove pero quiz na lang nako or sa exam na lang. Practice para at least maka-learn ka. Now, our concern is how do we actually assign the measure? So how do we know na ang isa ka subset is 0.5, ang isa is 0.6, ang isa is 0.7, ang isa is 0.4, diba? Kasi it doesn't tell us anything din naman dito kung paano tayo mag-assign. Basta ang alam lang natin sa ating mga na-prove that the event cannot be negative, probability cannot be negative, that the probability cannot exceed 1, that the probability of union of two events is just the sum of probabilities given that they are disjoint or they are mutually exclusive, and we can extend that to any number of events as long as these events are not mutually exclusive. We can just sum them, but kung hindi naman siya mutually exclusive, we can use the yung theorem natin kanina, probability of A union B. Kung ang A and B are not mutually exclusive, then probability is just probability of A plus probability of B minus probability of A intersection B. No? So marami, and then the probability of complement is always 1 minus the probability of the event. No? Lahat na-prove na natin yan, happy na tayo, ay tama pala yung ginagawa ko naman. Na-prove na kasi natin. Now, we'll be dealing with finite uniform probability space. Okay? So finite uniform probability space, so that is how do we really assign this number to each of the event. And for this assignment, for this type of assigning probabilities, we are going to discuss about finite uniform probabilities. Pag sinabi natin finite uniform, we'll be dealing with probability na discrete yung outcomes or finite yung outcome. So in this case, we have n outcomes, okay? And each of the outcomes is equally likely. So it means that they have equal probability. So each outcome is equally likely. And then the probability of outcome I is just 1 over n, because if we assume that they are equally likely, then we just have to 1 divided by n, or so this only applies kung ang ating sample space, lahat ng mga outcome doon ay equal yung probability. Now, to compute for probability of any event, you just need to get the cardinality of that event, because your event is a set, divided by the cardinality of the sample space, or n of E divided by n. That is just the outcome, number of outcomes in E divided by total number of outcomes. And n of A is equal to number of elements of E. Okay? Good ba? So therefore, the probability of an event is just outcomes. And using this type of assigning probability, it actually also satisfies the actions, because probability of A is equal to 0. It cannot be negative. No? Imposible naman maging negative kasi puro positive itong ating mga ano dito, numbers involved. So, hindi siya pwede man. And then 1 ang sample space because this is the cardinality of the sample space is also n. So n divided by n is 1. And of course, kung disjoint naman yung sets, then the cardinality is just the sum of the cardinality. Okay, so it satisfies the action. Okay, so that's it. Let's have another example. We are shooting at an archery target with radius r. So r yan siya. The bullseye has radius r over 4. So ito is r over 4. And there are 3 other rings with width r over 4. We shoot at the target until it is hit. Okay. So what is the probability space natin? It's just the area covered by this big circle. And if we're going to define the position of the target, the position of dart, no, yung ano natin, ano yung tawag dyan? Bow and, kalimutan ko yung term. Basta sa archery, yung pana, yung arrow pala. Kung saan nag-land, you can define that as a coordinate, no? Cartesian coordinate. Yung bullseye, yun yung 0, 0. For example, dito tumama yung ano, dito tumama yung arrow. So we can define the position, okay? And then we know that the area of the equation that defines the circle is x squared plus y squared less than or equal to r2. So kung dito tatama, no? Then nandyan lahat ng points on this circle defines our simple events or simple outcomes. We assume no na walang lalampas diyan sa circle na yun. So kahit dito siya pwede pa rin basta hindi lang siya lalampas. Okay? Now E is an event is a subregion. Okay, subregion siya. So for example, what's the probability na dito tatama dito sa red? Probability na dito sa yellow. Probability na dyan sa white. So yun yung i-compute natin na probability. Okay, so how do we define the probability? Using shapes actually ito. So what's the probability that it will hit this part of the circle? It's just the area of this part divided by the area of the circle. And we know the area of the circle is pi r squared. Okay? So, what's the probability that will hit the bullseye? Ano ba yung radius ng ating bullseye? Ano ba yung radius ng red circle? Kasi yan yung ano natin, yan yung bullseye natin. So any points na nandyan sa red circle is considered siya na bullseye. So anong probability? It's just the area of that circle divided by the area of this big circle. Okay, so pi r fourth square, 4 divided by r4. So we end up 1 over 6. And the white ring, what's the probability na mag-land siya dito sa white ring? It's just the area of this big circle here, which is 3/4 r, kasi 1/4, 1/4, di ba? 1/4, tapos 1/2, tapos 1/4, tapos 1/4. So it's just the big circle minus this small, the area of this small, divided by the whole thing, and you have 5 over 6. Okay? And this way of assigning probability also satisfies the action because the area, the event cannot be 0 because area cannot be negative. Remember, area is always positive or 0. The sample space is always 1. We assume that the whole sample space is the circle and it's 1, of course. And kung ang area naman natin ay hindi naman siya nag-intersect, then sum is just about it. Okay? So yan lang yung ating finite uniform probabilities.